When you initialize an instrument, an empty Midi object is initialized with it. You can either start editing the object by defining the buffer size and inserting events, or by inserting a whole Midi file. The Midi object can be saved as well. In today's video tutorial, I'll show you how saving a Midi file with set export area works. And never miss a tutorial by subscribing to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ADSR toots. You can only use one Midi object at a time within an instrument. The Midi object is held in memory and can be accessed by any of the script slots. It's possible to add, remove, and edit Midi events within the object, as well as import and export Midi files. The multi-script can also hold one Midi object and handles it the same way as an instrument. If you want to create a Midi sequence from scratch, you first need to assign a buffer size, which basically creates a number of inactive Midi events. From this point, you can insert and edit Midi events using the Midi event commands. Midi objects can be exported from Kontakt either by using the save Midi file command or via drag and drop. In either case, it's possible to define the export area, both in terms of start and end times, as well as the start and end tracks, by using set export area. In the last tutorial, we talked about how to save a Midi file, but we never went over how you do it by setting the export area. So let's take a look at set export area. Actually, before we look at that, I want to show you. So this is a Midi file that I've created in Ableton Live. It's one bar. It's pretty basic. I'm going to export this to my desktop. I'm going to call it new Midi file. Alright. Now what I'm going to do in Kontakt is I am going to make a new instrument, but I'm also going to load an old instrument because I want to copy a script that I've already created. I want to load that Midi file that I just saved. So I'm going to copy a script to load a Midi file that I just created. So I'm just going to copy this script. And here's a tip for you. If you are working on more than one instrument and you want to be able to navigate between them without having to exit edit mode, just use the instrument navigator and click on your instrument. This allows you to switch back and forth, so I can easily go between instruments and copy and paste settings. Alright, so I'm going to put this in the second slot. Alright, so I call this new Midi file. So I'm going to load it, and the Midi file loaded successfully. Alright. Alright, so MF set export looks like this. So the first thing you have is a name. This is the file name, including the path of the Midi file that you're going to set the export area for. You have your start position. You can use -1 to say the beginning of the entire object. You have your end position. You can also say -1 to reference the end of the Midi object. Then you have the start of the track and the end of the track. And you can also use -1 for both of these to reference all tracks, or the first track and the last track. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so we are going to use make per view today, just because I need a couple different rows. Not that many. I'm only going to use a height of 1 grid. Set the script title. I'm going to clear any message. I'm going to declare the path. Now, mind you, I could easily load up a script that I've already done that I used to save a MIDI file before. And that might work for some of you advanced users who's been following along for a while, but people that are new, I think it's important for them to see how things are done. So if this is mundane to you, feel free to skip ahead. You won't miss anything if you've seen this before. Alright, so I've declared the path. I set the path. I'm also going to declare a text edit box so that I can put a new name. You know, I can easily hard code this, but I think it's more fun to do it this way. So I'm going to do a couple of things to this text, text edit box. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the default value to a string of my choosing. I'm just going to call it empty. So I need to get the UID. Anytime you reference a UI control, you need to reference it by its ID if you want to set or get parameters for it. So I want to get the user ID of file name, and the parameter that I want to set is called control par text. I'm going to set it to empty. Alright. I'm also going to set the font. And you do that with control par font type. I'm going to set it to 25. Make it look nice and pretty. I'm going to make whatever I type in persistent. And I'm going to move this. And the reason I'm moving it is because I want to put a label behind it as a background, and I want the text to kind of be centered in the middle of the label. So that's why I'm moving it by pixels. So next I'm declaring a UI label, and I'm going to use this as a background. Alright, it's funny that when you design the user interface for Kontakt, you end up using a lot of things for purposes other than what they were made for. A label really wasn't intended to be used as a background for a text box. Alright, so I'm going to clear the text on this. Oops, did I do wrong? Set text. File name, label, oh, typo. There we go. Alright, so now you can see the label is being used as background, and I need to move it ever so slightly. Alright, so that will do it for that. Next I need a button to save. Let me put some space down here so I'll have to keep scrolling down for you. Okay, so I'm going to declare a button. It says save. I'm going to move this button to 2.1. I'm going to declare a value to hold the result of saving. I'm going to initialize this value, the value of -1. Oops. Missing my $sign. There we go. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a constant. So this is something new that we haven't worked with yet. A constant is basically a variable whose value doesn't change or is allowed to be changed. Variables, when you declare them, they can be one thing, but as you work, as your process is flowing, you can change the value of a variable. So that's the difference between a variable and a constant. And you declare it the same exact way. Ticks per beat. Okay, so ticks per beat is the number of ticks in a beat. There are 960 ticks in a beat, and I am storing this as a constant because I want to be able to use it in a drop-down menu without having to keep writing it multiple times. Since this doesn't change, it's fine to be a constant. Here's something new that we haven't used before. It's a UI menu. So this is a drop-down menu. It's really simple. You declare it, and then you add items to it. In my drop-down menus, I like to have the first option be a text box that tells you that you need to select something. So instead of it being the first value like ABC, just say select. Normally I would say whatever you're selecting, but this is a small text box, so I'm only going to say select. Alright, let's see what it looks like. I'm going to have to move that, so I guess you're going to have to wait. Okay, so I want the options that I'm going to have available are 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats, and 1 bar. So 1 beat is going to be ticks per beat. I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so the next one is going to be 2 beats. So this is going to be ticks per beat times 2. Put some space there. The next item is going to be 3 beats. And that's going to be ticks per beat times 3. And then the last one is going to be 1 bar. And that's going to be ticks per beat times 4. And then finally, I am going to move this to a better home. Alrighty. Okay, so there's one last button that I need. I need a button to actually save what I select in the drop down button. I mean, of course, I can make it so that when I click the drop down that it automatically changes, but I'm not going to do that today. So I'm just declared the button, moved it, and I need to clear the text on it, or actually set the text on it. Instead of the set export area. And one last variable that I need is I need a placeholder for the status of me actually setting the export area. So I'll just have a variable here, check it, we have our button, we have our drop down, we have our save, and our text box. Alright, so now let's make this do something. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is the menu. So on UI, control menu, I am going to display something in the message area. Alright, so let's see if this works. 1 beat, there you go. 2 beats, typo. 3 beats, 1 bar. 1 beat, yeah, 2 beats. Yeah, we don't need no beats. We just need beats here. And beats, there we go. Okay, now if I wanted to make this drop down menu automatically selected, the command to actually set export area I would put here. So you can make it a 1-step process instead of 2. So the next thing that we need is we need our set export area button. So the callback for that. So on UI control, set export area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set area status equals to mf set export area. I'm going to pass in the path. I'm going to pass in the path. And the file name. And the file name extension. Next, I'm going to pass in the start position. -1 will go to the beginning of the object. The next one is whatever I selected in the menu, -1. And the reason why I'm doing -1 is because position is 0 based. If there is 960 ticks in a beat, that means beat number 1 starts at 0 and beat number 2 starts at 959. Okay. Start track -1 and end track -1. All right. Now I'm going to check the status to make sure that the set export area worked. If it is 0, then it was set successfully. If it was anything else, there was an error. All right. Message where successfully. Here we go. All right, let's test it out. Export area set successfully. And finally, we have our save button. So we set save MFID equal to the save MIDI file command. Pass in the path, file name, and extension. we also need to capture when it's complete by using the on async complete callback. Now remember, what this does is when the file save operation is complete, this callback is called. And there's a couple of things that you can capture in this callback. So one of the first things that we can capture is we can check to see if the callback was from the actual save, because multiple things can call on async complete, if you remember. So we need to check to see if this is indeed the one for save MIDI file. So we check to see if it's equal. If it is equal, then we can continue. So that we set mfid equal to -1. We reset our button. And then we check to see if it was successful or not. Remember, this is called when the save operation is complete, but we still need to check to see if there was an error or not. And we use ni async exit status. If it's 0, that means there was an error. There was an error. Otherwise, it was saved successfully. All right, let's close this up and take a look at it. We'll close this. All right, so keep in mind that the MIDI file that I showed you earlier in Ableton is still loaded in memory. I'm going to set a export area of 1 beat. Set successfully. I'm going to set the name to my save MIDI UI. And I'm going to save this. And it saved it successfully. So let's load this, my save MIDI UI. And as you can see, 1 beat. This is the original. This is the one I just did, 1 beat. Let's go back to Kontakt. 2 beats. Save that. Now we get 2 beats. Let's go back to Kontakt. 3 beats. Save that. Oops, wrong one. Now we got 3 beats. Let's go back to Kontakt and choose the whole bar. Set. Saved it. And now we have the whole bar. This is the original. This is the whole bar. There we go. So keep in mind that in Kontakt 5.2, MIDI file handling has been upgraded. There are old commands that work from earlier versions that are still available for backwards compatibility, but for purposes of this tutorial, we use the newer methods. And don't forget to check out our website at www.kontakttutorials for more Kontakt tutorials and sounds, ADSR Kontakt tutorials, supercharge your Kontakt skills. This is DJ Nice signing off until next time. Now go make some music.